We are a week and a half away from UFC Saudi Arabia. Adesanya versus Nassourdine Imavov. Does Adesanya still have it? Is he going to come back and show us a y'all must forgot type of performance? Or is Nassourdine Imavov, who's not been that impressive as of late, is he going to hit his peak? We'll see. This card is stacked, and I am going to predict every single one of these fights. Okay, we have a lot of good ones. We've got some UFC debutants in Khan Ofli, right? You know, some people are saying this is the new Volkanovski, man. We'll see what's up. Shamil Gaziev versus Thomas Peterson, just stay on the lookout. I'm going to do an entire breakdown video on that. I'm going to touch on that for just a little bit in this video, but I am going to do its own video for that one. We're going to have to do a deep dive on that. But without further ado, let's get into this. The first fight on the card, Hamdy Abdelwahab versus Jamal Pogues. Okay, Jamal Pogues is a bit of a new age, new era DC. If you guys don't know Jamal Pogues' style, he's got the very fast hands. He's not the biggest heavyweight. He's sort of got the sort of speed of what you may think was a former middleweight or a potential middleweight. Jamal Pogues has that potential middleweight frame. He's got very fast hands, not a whole lot of pop. And he actually has pretty decent wrestling. Jamal Pogues has a wrestling background. He's sort of that new age Daniel Cormier without all the skill. No, I'm joking, man. So yeah, Jamal Pogues, fast hands, good wrestling. Hamdy Abdelwahab. I've actually been getting Hamdy ready for this fight. Of course, you guys may know I am a former wrestler, and I often get brought into Extreme Couture. Hamdy actually flew to Vegas a few weeks ago, got some rounds in. Hamdy's actually looking pretty good. But unfortunately for Hamdy, I have to keep my bias out of this. He's been very inactive in the UFC. Again, I'm a big fan of Abdelwahab, but I'm going to go with Jamal Pogues because of the wrestling background. Hamdy, he's not necessarily the biggest KO artist, so he's not really out here flatlining people. Jamal Pogues, pretty decent wrestling, fast hands. Actually, fraud checked Shamil Gaziev's future opponent in Thomas Peterson. Jamal Pogues just kind of like lit him up and taught him a boxing lesson in that one. So that's actually a pretty good win. But I'm ultimately going to go with Jamal Pogues because Hamdy has been extremely inactive. This guy, he fights like once every 5 years, it seems. So I'm going with Jamal Pogues. Bogdan Grad versus Lucas Alexander. Now, this is a real hardcore fans fight. This is one of those fights where you just wish it was on UFC 312. That card needs a lot of help, and you just wish they would put Bogdan Grad on there and Lucas Alexander maybe as like a feature fight. I mean, the disrespect on Lucas Alexander and Bogdan Grad for them putting this on the early prelims. All jokes aside, I'm going to go with Lucas Alexander. Bogdan Grad seems, he's got the Dana White Contender Series photo, the black and white, right? He's not made his UFC debut yet. He's wearing the and one early 2000s basketball shorts. He's not really earned the UFC custom shorts yet. And Lucas Alexander sort of looks like a guy that we've seen in the UFC before. I'm probably going to lean on the side of Lucas Alexander, who is going to have a 3-inch height advantage, a 3-inch reach advantage. And again, you look at the record, 1-1 for Bogdan Grad. Now, I may be wrong. Bogdan Grad may be the number one prospect in all of Russia he may be like a 50 times Sambo champion. And in that case, he's probably going to win. But if that's not the case, if he doesn't have this extremely crazy background of championship level martial arts in his back pocket, I just feel like Lucas Alexander is going to get it done. He's got the 8-4 record. And Bogdan's got the 1-1 record, right? So I'm going to go with Lucas Alexander. But let's get on to another fire fight. Jasmine Jasudavicius versus Maria Bueno. This is actually a really badass fight. I think that Jasmine Jasudavicius fighting out of Canada, she seems to be like the surging fighter out of Canada right now. She's been on a pretty good win streak. Maria Bueno, championship experience. She's fought the who's who. I'm probably going to pick... Maria Bueno was beating Raquel Pennington in the early going of their fight. She's got a good guillotine, and she also has some heavy hands. But Jasmine Jasudavicius, I'm going to pick her. I think she's going to have the better gas tank. I think she's going to be a little bit stronger, a little bit faster, right? and a little bit more vicious. So I'm going to pick Jasmine Jasudavicius to win this one. Firas Ziam versus Mike Davis. You know, dude, listen, Firas Ziam has been proving us wrong in his last 3 fights. You know, we used to call him Twigman Ziam. He had no pop, right? Now he's coming off of a couple of pretty good victories. A grappling victory where he out-grappled Claudio Puelles, who is not the best fighter, but out-grappling him, Claudio Puelles is a grappler. That's what he does. He's like the leg lock guy. That's pretty impressive. And then he knocked out Matt Frevola. I think that people are sort of overhyping Firas Ziam, and people are talking about him as like the 5th best guy, the 5th best surging contender in the UFC. He caught Matt Frevola. Okay, I mean, it's a good KO, it's a great KO. But this is a tougher fight for him because Mike Davis is sturdy, he's durable, and Mike Davis is also someone who's got some pop. He's also someone that has an ability to grapple. But I'm going to go with Firas Ziam just because I think the clinch game, the clinch work is looking really good. And I also think Firas Ziam is going to have an ability to keep Mike Davis at the end of his reach. And I don't see Firas Ziam just getting ragdolled in this fight because he was able to, show some decent grappling in that fight against Claudio Puelles. So I'm going to go with Firas Ziam by a decision. Terrance McKinney versus Damir Hadzovic. Terrance McKinney has been knocked out so many times at this point. He just got head kicked by Ribovic, I believe. And he's been KO'd like 5 other times. Damir Hadzovic, 38 years old. His record's not that great, 14-7. It's not like he's got a lot of good wins, but he's not someone that's not durable. Again, he's 38, a lot older than Terrance McKinney, but the issue with counting on Terrance McKinney to win a fight is that if he's going in there with someone that's somewhat durable, that's somewhat fast on the feet, that's a decent striker, these days, more than, his last fight and more than the fight before, every single time he fights, it gets worse. His chin is just deteriorating. So if this was someone that didn't have any pop at all, if this was someone that wasn't durable at all, I would probably pick Terrance McKinney because I think that, he could afford to take a punch to give one of his own. And we know Terrance McKinney can finish people early on because of his speed and his power. And he does have decent grappling as well. So it's possible that maybe he gets a submission, but I think that I don't see him putting Damir Hadzovic out in the first round. Maybe he does, but I think if he doesn't get himself a first round finish, he's eventually going to get caught and put away. And that's a huge factor when you're fighting someone that's somewhat durable like Damir Hadzovic. Let's go on to the next one. Abdul Kareem Selwady versus Bolaji. This is an interesting one because both of these guys looked really good on the Dana White Contender Series, but when they made their UFC debuts, they didn't look that great. I forget who Bolaji fought in his UFC debut. I believe it was a short notice replacement from Brazil, or maybe it was from Peru. Either Brazil or Peru. He fought someone on short notice that actually had a pretty good performance against him. And I think that his last performance was sort of underwhelming, whereas Abdul Kareem Selwady, he got finished in his UFC debut against the Mule. What's his name? Shit, dude, his name starts with an R. Loic Radzhabov. Yeah, the hunchback. Loic Radzhabov finished Abdul Kareem Selwady, but Abdul Kareem Selwady on the Contender Series had an amazing performance against that guy from the UK, the guy that's known for the body shots, right? I forget his name. He had a lot of hype going into it. I'm going to go with Abdul Kareem Selwady. I really like his ability to impose his will. And I think Bolaji, in his last performance, he was very reliant on the jab, and I didn't really see a whole lot else from him. Abdul Kareem Selwady has some pretty good boxing on the inside and also can take you down, has really good cardio. So I just think I've seen more impressive performances from Abdul Kareem Selwady than I have from Bolaji. So I'm going to go with Abdul. I think he's a little bit more well-rounded. He might get caught, but I think I'm going to pick him to win this one. Let's get on to the next one. Shamil Gaziev versus Thomas Peterson. Now, this one is a legendary banger matchup. Thomas Peterson, sort of the up-and-comer. Shamil Gaziev, the legend of the game. So this is sort of maybe a passing of the torch. Even though Shamil's in his prime, dude, I think Shamil is in an interesting one because Thomas Peterson, he's got output. Thomas Peterson's got okay cardio. He was in there with Jamal Pogues. Him and Pogues are sort of guys that should be fighting at middleweight but are fighting at heavyweight instead. Whereas Shamil Gaziev could never not be a heavyweight. Shamil Gaziev has to be a heavyweight because he would never be able to make 205 in 100 years. Whereas Thomas Peterson, Jamal Pogues could maybe fight at middleweight. They could sort of chip away and get down there. Again, I don't want to talk about this too much, but Thomas Peterson, pretty good gas tank. You've got a high output battle with him and Jamal Pogues where he must have thrown over 60 strikes, which is a whole lot. I don't think I've ever seen Shamil throw as many as that. Now, however, Shamil Gaziev, when he beat Martin Budai, he TKO'd him in the second round. That was Shamil's greatest performance of all time. Just marched him down, threw the kitchen sink at him. That was a really, really good performance. Sort of like a heavyweight Max Holloway, Calvin Kattar type of performance. I just think Shamil's a little bit too much for him. I think Shamil's just a little bit too big for Thomas Peterson. He's a grizzled vet at this point. He's had a couple of UFC fights. He's shown us in his last outing there's another facet to his game where he sort of was able to slow things down against Dontel Mays. And I just think Shamil has a really good chance to take this fight into any of his realms. He can sort of take you down and smudge you into the canvas. He can sort of, make you hold his weight up against the cage, or if he wants, he can kind of just blunder his way towards you on the feet and sort of throw the kitchen sink at you. And again, Shamil's very durable. He eats punches for breakfast. And he's also got some thud on his punches. I told you guys I spoke to Shamil when this card was first announced, and he told me that he's actually planning to come into this fight a little bit bigger than usual. So he has a chance to come in here with a little bit more mass on him. The weight cut is going to be interesting. That's going to be an interesting one. But Shamil's telling us that he's actually packed on some muscle for this fight. So Shamil's got the height advantage, 6'4" versus 6'1". You may say Thomas Peterson's got the lighter man skill advantage, and yeah, there's a little bit of a lighter man skill ability for Thomas Peterson, but I think the longer you stay at heavyweight and you sort of reject fighting in your real weight class, the more that lighter man skill starts to deteriorate. Maybe Thomas Peterson back in the day used to be sort of a lighter guy, but nowadays he's sort of bulked up. I don't know how much longer that's going to last. Shamil Gaziev, 265 pounds, and Thomas Peterson's 250. So Gaziev's got a 4.5-inch reach advantage as well. Man, this is going to be a tough fight for Peterson. I'm going to go with Gaziev. I'm going to pick Shamil. Again, I'm going to do an in-depth breakdown for this one. We'll get to the X's and O's, but I'm picking Shamil Gaziev. I just think he's going to make Thomas Peterson carry his weight up against the clinch, and I think it's going to be really difficult for Thomas Peterson to reverse the position in the clinch. And also Shamil Gaziev, Thomas Peterson doesn't have a lot of pop. He's got a decent jiu-jitsu grappling game, but so does Shamil. Shamil's got jiu-jitsu as well, Bahraini jiu-jitsu. So let's get on to the next one. Muhammad Naimov versus Alexander Volkanovski at home. Khan Ofli. He's got a 66-inch reach, and he's an inch taller than Volk. So he's got the stocky man's game, but Muhammad Naimov's going to have a 70-inch reach. That's a 4-inch reach advantage, 2-inch height advantage. He's from Tajikistan, and Khan Ofli's from Australia. So that's also interesting. Listen, Khan Ofli's been training with Adesanya in preparation for this. So, they're going to have that extra energy. They're going to have that y'all must have forgot energy. But Khan Ofli lost his Dana White Contender Series debut. He got KO'd. So this is a guy coming off of a KO loss after the Dana White Contender Series. This is a little bit strange. I guess it must have been a good fight. It must have been a war. They usually only give the losers of the Dana White Contender Series fights UFC contracts if it was a solid scrap. But I'm going to go with Muhammad Naimov. However, Muhammad Naimov, he beat Nathaniel Wood, which is a pretty good victory, although there was a lot of moments in that fight where he was grabbing the gloves, he was grabbing the cage. It was a little bit of a weird one, but he dropped Nathaniel Wood. He has a lot of power. He's big for the division. But Khan Ofli, for the most part, is a grappler. He's got a lot of submissions on his record. And Muhammad Naimov got choked out against Felipe Lima in his last outing. So he got choked out by Felipe Lima, who's a really solid featherweight, lighter man skill, used to fight at bantamweight. Kind of looks like a Brazilian Dustin Poirier. He trains at All Stars in Sweden, if you guys know who I'm talking about. So Khan Ofli might be able to get this take down and work towards a submission, but I don't know, man. Konofli doesn't really strike me as the kind of guy that's going to get a rear naked choke. Konofli looks like, the type of guy that's going to get himself one of those Kimuras, right? He's one of those guys going to get himself an arm triangle, right? Something like that. But Muhammad Naimov just a little bit more proven, not coming off of a KO loss in the Contender Series, coming off of a submission loss to an absolute monster in Felipe Lima, who's really, really good. I'm going to go with Muhammad Naimov, okay? This is one of those where I have to see Konofli actually get it done in the big leagues before I can pick him against a Muhammad Naimov. If this was like a Jamie Malarkey fight, Muhammad Naimov's beat Jamie Malarkey, then I would pick Konofli. Like, I would pick him to beat some fighters in the UFC. I just don't know if I can pick him to beat Muhammad Naimov, who's going to have a really big power advantage. He can hold his own in the grappling too, so I'm going to go with him. Now, this one is very interesting. Ikram Aliskerov versus Andre Muniz. I'm tempted to pick Andre Muniz in this fight because I actually think Andre Muniz's striking is improving quite a bit. A lot of people don't know this, but just by looking at Andre Muniz, you should be able to tell this. This guy has one of the longest reaches or ape index in the UFC. He's 6'1", but he has a 78-inch reach. That seems to be a problem for a lot of fighters. And, actually, Ikram Aliskerov has a pretty long reach as well, 76-inch reach. It's not crazy, but he doesn't have T-Rex arms. I actually expected him to have, the T-Rex arms. Andre Muniz, same reach as I. That's the same exact reach as I. That's pretty crazy. So this is why it's interesting. Andre Muniz, we know he's got good grappling, okay? We still have yet to see Ikram Aliskerov and his grappling in the UFC. This guy's coming to the UFC and he's knocked people out left and right. We still have yet to see him really grapple. We know it's great. We know how good his takedown defense is because of that fight back in the day with Hamzat, where Hamzat really couldn't take him down. He's coming off of a brutal KO loss to Robert Whittaker, though. I don't think Andre Muniz is as dangerous, as fast as Robert Whittaker, but it's really difficult to get in on the inside of Andre Muniz because he has these really long arms and he's been doing a good job at keeping people at the end of his punches recently. Fair enough, he's been submitted by the likes of Brendan Allen. He's been finished before on the ground. He's gotten beaten up by the Iron Turtle. However, the Iron Turtle is a gritty guy that imposes his will on the feet, that's dangerous, that's going to march you down, that's got a nice slick jab. He tries to break people on the feet, and actually Andre Muniz seemed to be getting the better of Jung Young Park, which is really impressive. Very impressive. And Andre Muniz was kind of outstriking Brendan Allen a little bit. And why do I say that's impressive? Well, I'll talk about it a little bit more when we break down the main event. Brendan Allen's striking is actually underrated. I know people don't like Brendan Allen. His striking is actually underrated. It doesn't mean it's great. But Andre Muniz, I don't mind his chances in this fight. I think that he can give Ikram Aliskerov some serious issues because although Ikram has a lot of power, that's clear. The guys that he's KO'd are really bottom of the barrel in the UFC. And also, Ikram Aliskerov, I do believe that if he takes down Andre Muniz, he'll be able to control him. But it's going to be hard to just finish him because Andre Muniz is a good grappler himself. So, I feel like if you're going to want to go with the underdog, this is one of those underdogs that you're going to want to pick. However, I do still recognize that Ikram Aliskerov and his wrestling base is going to be a little bit more dominant than Andre Muniz's jiu-jitsu base. And I also recognize that although Ikram Aliskerov has pretty bad defense, Andre Muniz is not known for KOing people, right? And I could see Ikram Aliskerov catching Muniz and hurting him. So I'm going to side with Ikram Aliskerov in here, although it's going to be tricky. I think this is going to be a decision for Ikram or maybe a KO. We could see that. But if he doesn't finish Andre Muniz with a big moment on the feet, I think it's going to be a really competitive and fun fight. Good grappling exchanges. I think that Andre Muniz is going to have a lot of high output moments on the feet where he's sort of picking Ikram apart while Ikram's trying to close the distance. So it's going to be a great fight, but I'm going to side with Ikram Aliskerov. Just lean towards him just a little bit. Let's get on to the next one. Nurmagomedov versus Vinicius Oliveira. Great matchup. This is awesome matchmaking by the UFC. I'm going to pick Nurmagomedov. I think this is a pretty easy pick. Although Vinicius Oliveira knocked out Sopaj, and that's impressive because Sopaj is pretty good. He was losing that fight, and he got out-grappled in that fight as well. He got taken down a few times and controlled. And he just beat Ricky Simón, but I really think Ricky Simón is awfully overrated. I think nowadays, maybe not so much. But back in the day, when people were picking Ricky Simón to beat Song, I remember people saying it, man, I just got Ricky Simón. I just think, this guy's a future champ. I thought he was so overrated back then. Like, Ricky Simón has a big blast double leg, but not the best control. He doesn't have a great submission game. His striking is sort of low output. He relies on a big gnarly overhand. That's basically a big overhand, a leg kick, and a big blast double leg. And Vinicius Oliveira sort of picked him apart, right? But Said Nurmagomedov is not a short, stocky guy like Ricky Simón. He's actually sort of a lankier fighter for this division. He's 5'8", so only an inch shorter than Vinicius Oliveira. He has a long and rangy striking style, kind of similar to Umar Nurmagomedov. And another thing that I like about Said is that he can really capitalize off of you making a mistake on the feet by latching up submissions. So he's so good at blending his striking with submissions on the feet. I think that he can also just shoot a takedown. I mean, listen, I know that Said Nurmagomedov is not the best grappler in this division, but I know he can shoot a takedown in this fight if he needs it, and he will be able to get down Vinicius Oliveira, who got controlled by Sopaj. Yeah, I'm going to pick Said. I think that Oliveira is good. I think his last performance was pretty good, but I think Said is going to match him on speed. I think Said is a better grappler. I think he can submit Vinicius. So I'm going to say Said Nurmagomedov mixing it up really well to get himself a decision or maybe a submission in this one. Either way, it should be a really fun fight because both guys are going to be, trading on the feet. Both very explosive fighters, but I'm going to pick Said Nurmagomedov to get this one done. Sergei Pavlovich versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. This is going to be a sick matchup. This is going to end in a KO. All right, first or second round KO. If Sergei Pavlovich goes in there overly cautious, maybe the last few losses are looming on him mentally and he's maybe not the same guy, I could see this going into deep waters and sort of being like a staring contest. But I just don't think that's possible, man. I think that the reason why I trust Sergei Pavlovich to be able to fight his normal fight is because it's going to be a lot easier to catch Jairzinho Rozenstruik because of the reach advantage. Against Volkov, even though Sergei Pavlovich has a slight reach advantage over Volkov, Volkov is so good at keeping his range. He's also just like the tallest guy in the heavyweight division, and the kicks are really good. He's got a good ability to keep people at range. It's hard to hit him clean these days. And against Aspinall, it's like he hit Aspinall, but Aspinall just puts you out of there the first time he lands. He's so fast. Jairzinho, he is a plottier guy compared to Aspinall, and he's not as good at keeping you at range like a Volkov. He's tricky. He's crafty. Jairzinho is very crafty. I believe that if Sergei Pavlovich can't finish him for whatever reason, this goes to a decision. Of course, I picked Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I mean, he's going to be able to keep Sergei at bay. He's going to be able to jab him up. He's going to be able to chop the legs. But, I mean, we're looking at the reach here. 84-inch reach, 78-inch reach for Jairzinho. That's a 6-inch reach advantage for Sergei Pavlovich. He's also going to be slightly taller. I think he's going to land on Jairzinho, and Jairzinho's chin is not as good as Sergei Pavlovich. Jairzinho's been finished by Volkov, flatlined by Francis Ngannou. I could see him KOing Sergei. Jairzinho's got the pop, but let me tell you this. Jairzinho, when he fought Shamil, I know Shamil Gaziev is one of the toughest guys in the game. He's one of those rootin' tootin' sort of fighters that, he can take a punch. But Jairzinho was in there for 5 rounds. I feel like if Sergei Pavlovich is in there with Shamil, he's putting him out of there, dude, fast. He's putting him out of there fast. That'd be like a Shamil Abdurakhimov type of performance. Shamil Abdurakhimov got finished in the first round. That's basically the type of power that we're talking about. I think Sergei's going to be able to land pretty easily. And fair enough, he had his moments against Blades where him and Blades were sort of slugging it out a little bit, right? Him and Blades was lighting him up, and Sergei had landed probably 20-plus punches, and Blades was still in there doing his thing. So it could get interesting because Jairzinho is a better striker than Curtis Blades, and he's got slicker footwork. I mean, we talk about Jairzinho being slightly more plotty than Aspinall, of course. Not as good at range as a Volkov. He got finished by Volkov himself. I believe that was a first-round finish. kicks to the midsection that Volkov got him with. So right off the bat, I think Sergei's more durable. But the Blades fight was interesting. Jairzinho got taken down by Blades. He lost to Blades. And he didn't do as well on the feet against Blades, because Blades also is tricky because he's got a long reach and he's really good with his 1-2s. But Sergei Pavlovich, I always thought his power was slightly overrated. He's not this guy with one hitter quitter. You're out, you're asleep. Like, I think that Aspinall hits harder than him. Some people are going to say, whoa. Aspinall doesn't hit hard, bro. He's fast. Learn the difference, man. Like, Sergei Pavlovich obviously can crack, but I think it's his reach mixed with his power that makes him very devastating. I'm going to pick Sergei Pavlovich to KO Jairzinho in the first round. I think it's going to be one of these like big slugger moments. Maybe he'll catch Jairzinho with an uppercut, a lead uppercut from across the octagon or something like that. Sergei Pavlovich's going to land a shovel uppercut that looks like a straight right hand or something like that on Jairzinho. He's going to wobble him, and I think he's going to finish him. He's going to have a slugger moment where he goes big slugging up against the fence. That's kind of Sergei Pavlovich's way. Once he rocks you, he just starts slugging. But again, if Jairzinho can play his cards right, if he can invest early to the legs of Sergei Pavlovich because he has a deeper tool bag and he can evade the KO early, I think Sergei Pavlovich, not only does he get frustrated as fights goes on, he gets very frustrated. He's kind of like a Vettori a little bit. He's sort of like a Vettori, man. But also, he doesn't have a lot of tools. Sergei doesn't really throw a lot of kicks. He doesn't wrestle. He's a boxer that can slug. Whereas Jairzinho's got a little bit more finesse. He'll pop you, fade back. Will pop you, fade back. Right? We saw that against Shamil. But ultimately, I think, again, he TKO'd Shamil due to exhaustion, which was very good from him. But there were no moments where he was rocking Shamil, and Shamil was like just mouth breathing in front of him. He had his chin on a silver platter in that one, and I think that kind of speaks to Jairzinho not necessarily having more power than Sergei, and I think that Sergei's going to be able to land. So I'm going to go with Pavlovich, but do not be surprised. I'm not that confident in this pick because Sergei's on a bit of a downward skid because of the last two losses. And he might get frustrated easily if he doesn't find success in the first round. And again, I just think that if this leaves the first round, I could see Jairzinho sort of floating around and stinging him, floating around like a butterfly, stinging like a bee. Okay. But I'm going to pick Pavlovich by first round KO. Man, this is going to be real interesting if Sergei loses this one. And I'm going to regret not picking Jairzinho. But it's going to be a close fight. I just think Pavlovich's power is still devastating, and I think he's going to have an easier time landing on Jairzinho. So I'm going to pick Sergei to win this fight by KO first round. Let's get on to the next one. Shara Magomedov versus Michael Venom Page. This is going to be an interesting one. Shara Magomedov, he has the output on his side. He has the combos on his side. But he don't have the wrestling, and he's not about to use it, okay? I wouldn't be shocked if we see Shara Magomedov pull out the wrestling, a desperation takedown, second, third round. Who knows? Maybe he'll go to it. But I think that Michael Venom Page is going to light him up at range. And I think Michael Venom Page is going to fraud check him. Not fraud check him. I don't think fraud check him, because fraud check kind of is when you expect someone to dominate and they get destroyed because they're not ready for it, right? Whereas I don't think that Shara Magomedov would ever dominate Michael Venom Page. You know what I mean? So it's just a stylistic matchup that's tough for him. Shara Magomedov coming off of the spinning elbow, spinning back fist combo, which was unbelievable, and he's got 2 TKOs in his last couple of fights. But outside of those moments where he lands something out of a comic book, out of like what's that video game called? Mortal Kombat. If he lands a Mortal Kombat combination, then of course he can finish you. But I actually don't think he has a lot of pop. He has the output. He has the kicks. His kicks are amazing, but we've seen it with Michael Venom Page. He's almost impossible to just like pick apart with output because he's never in range for you to hit him. He's just not someone that will stay in your range. And he's just so good at shutting people down with their ability to like light him up. And this is why I picked Kevin Holland against him, because I was saying Kevin Holland's got good output, UFC caliber. Michael Venom Page is knocking out all these cans in Bellator, but Kevin Holland's going to be able to leg kick him and like go tit for tat. But Kevin Holland had no chance in that fight. And then the same thing against Ian Gary. Ian Gary, he's got the output, he's got the speed. Maybe Kevin Holland couldn't do anything, but Ian Gary's a higher level striker, more surgical on the feet. And Ian Gary did nothing to Michael Page. Ian Gary, in my opinion, has gotten slower as time has gone on. I think it may be the diet, but either way, he's still a pretty solid striker. But Michael Venom Page just like didn't get hit at all. And every single time, like he would literally telegraph that he's about to punch Ian Gary. He would do like a dribble in between his legs, like he's dribbling a basketball. And then that would show that he's about to come in. And then he would throw 1-2. Ian Gary would try to move back and he would still get hit with it. My point is, MVP's speed is ridiculous. He's so difficult to hit. He's so difficult to kick because he's always darting in and out of range. And the speed, the right hand. I think he's going to be able to win himself a decision here on the feet. I think he's going to be able to win himself a decision. So the way I think this fight is going to go is, I think we're going to see Shara Magomedov get outstruck. I think he's going to get frustrated. And I think in the second round, maybe he'll have himself a moment. I think his chance here is going to be second round, biting down on the mouthpiece, saying, fuck it, and really going for something flashy on MVP. And maybe he can get him out of there because MVP's been finished before. You know, he's not, I'm not going to say he's not durable. He's pretty durable, but he's someone that can be put away. Shara Magomedov has a chance. I think he's going to get frustrated. MVP is going to be clocking him with the right hand. He's going to be catching him coming in, hardly getting hit. Shara's going to be frustrated. Second round, Shara's going to be like really going for him, throwing the kitchen sink, frustrated, throwing flashy techniques to try to compensate for the fact that his, basics are not working. And I could see him maybe getting caught. I could see him maybe getting KO'd like that, because if you get frustrated in front of MVP, that's what he wants. Like, he wants you to dart in. He wants to be able to run you onto a spinning elbow or a flying knee. I don't see Shara getting flying knee because he's not a shorter opponent. He's, how tall is he? He's 6'2". He's similar height to MVP. But yeah, again, 79-inch reach for Michael Page, 6-inch reach advantage, 73-inch reach for Shara Magomedov. I think if he doesn't get MVP out of there in the second round during his frustrated flurry, I think he's just going to get beat by decision. So I'm going to go with MVP by a decision in this fight. And I could also see Shara Magomedov getting so frustrated that he starts shooting takedowns as well. Don't be surprised. Do not. I feel like this is such an easy fight to call, because I just know that Shara is going to have a hard time kicking, and his kicking is really his bread and butter. His boxing is not that great. He's really not got a great chance in the boxing range because, again, the reach, I think he gets frustrated. I think he's going to try to KO Page in the second round and shoot desperation takedowns. Maybe MVP gets beat if he gets taken down and controlled. I could see Shara maybe leveling up just a little bit. The OV at the end of his name, maybe he's got some potential to level up faster than others in the wrestling. You never know. But this is either going to be an MVP 30-27, 29-28, or a KO in the second round for either guy, right? So I'm going to go with MVP, though. I just think he's faster, he's slicker, he's really good at keeping people at bay and shutting people's output down. So he'll win this fight. He'll get it done. But this is going to be interesting. I think I'm going to call this perfectly. We'll see. But yeah, again, second round, Shara's frustrated. He'll really go for it. Maybe shoot desperation takedowns if he can't get it, or maybe get KO'd. So that's probably going to happen. On to the next one. Israel Adesanya versus Nassourdine Imavov. Man. I said in my early look video that I was leaning Adesanya in part because of how well he did against Dricus du Plessis, and also in the fact that Dricus du Plessis is built different. His durability is on another level. He's got another level of strength. He's got the sloppy style, and he just sort of wears on you, and he's super hungry. And I don't think Nassourdine Imavov is as strong, hits as hard. But one thing that Nassourdine Imavov has in this fight, he is the surging contender. He's going to be really hungry. That's for sure. Whereas Adesanya, this is a big step down in attention when it comes to how big this matchup is. Of course, like, this is still a big fight. Every hardcore UFC fan is going to watch it. But this isn't a title fight with a beef like the Dricus one. This is not like the Sean Strickland title fight. This ain't a title. There may be less eyes. There's not as much hype. Nassourdine Imavov and Adesanya, they don't go back and forth. They don't have anything that they're saying to each other. It kind of feels like the Vettori fight. It kind of feels like the Cannonier fight. The difference is Adesanya was in the middle of a title reign back then. And we've seen in those fights, Adesanya usually doesn't really have his best performances. So there's a question here. Is Adesanya going to be as good as he was against Dricus, where he seemed really motivated? I don't want to make a pick based off of that alone. I'm really going to try to look at this stylistically, because I think Adesanya, now that he's not fighting for a belt, he knows Nassourdine Imavov is not a big name. I think he's going to go into this fight just trying to do it for the love of the game, okay? And yeah, Nassourdine Imavov, he wants to be a champion, probably more than Adesanya at this point, because Adesanya has already done that. But I think that when I talked about, for example, Dricus du Plessis, next level of durability, one thing that's important to take into account is that Nassourdine Imavov has a granite chin. All right? Adesanya, very durable. But Nassourdine Imavov, I've never seen this guy get wobbled, not once in his entire career. Not against Jared Cannonier, who hit him clean a few times in their fight. Not against Sean Strickland. I know Strickland doesn't have a lot of pop, but Strickland remember, the Nassourdine Imavov fight with Sean Strickland was like the one time Sean Strickland had the fuck it approach and literally brawled. We all make fun of Sean Strickland as someone that's saying, we're going to go to war. We're going to go to war, just to teep and jab at range. But in that fight, he actually brawled. And Nassourdine Imavov, 5th round, in the pocket with Sean Strickland, going for him, eating punches like Tic Tacs, slugging in the pocket, had Sean Strickland clinching up, not for dear life, but Strickland was like, oh shit, like I gotta contain this because this guy's going after me and nothing I hit him with is affecting him. Nassourdine Imavov has a really, really granite chin. Insane durability. Nobody talks about it. So that is going to be a huge factor, because if we get into the later rounds and Adesanya starts to slow down a little bit with his speed and his, ability to catch you with a counter really quickly, and they're just going tit for tat on the feet, keep in mind, Adesanya has notoriously had closer striking battles with people that can match him in stature. Adesanya has a 80-inch reach, and Imavov has a 75-inch reach. So Adesanya is going to have a significant reach advantage. But I really think that reach may be slightly overrated. I think that stature in general, height, is also a big component of being able to land on someone at range. Adesanya, Dricus is 6'1", so Dricus is still tall, but he's not as tall as Nassourdine Imavov. It's a little bit easier to keep Dricus at bay, despite the fact that Dricus has a longer reach than Imavov, right? His defense, it's not that amazing. I mean, maybe it bumped up a little bit against Adesanya. I'm not saying Dricus is like easy to just pick apart because he's constantly just running at you. But in general, I feel like it's a little bit easier to land on him, like the body shots that Adesanya was landing, than it will be for Adesanya to do that to Imavov. Jan Blachowicz, Alex Pereira, these taller fighters, Sean Strickland is a little bit taller than Dricus too. They seem to have a little bit of an easier time going tit for tat with Adesanya. Keep in mind, again, Adesanya in the early rounds, that's when he's most dangerous. He still looked really great in that last, we're going to talk about Adesanya in his last fight. Again, 3 and 4, he had great output. He broke records for himself, right? Adesanya has never exceeded 40 strikes in a single round before, and did it twice against Dricus du Plessis in the 3rd and 4th round. Those were his usual cruise mode Izzy rounds. What do I mean by cruise mode Izzy? I mean, for most of his career, if he couldn't finish someone in the first 2 rounds, we would see his output sort of drop off a cliff. And we would just see this guy throw like 11, 12 significant strikes around. So if we do see cruise mode Izzy, if he doesn't finish Nassourdine Imavov, who is insanely durable early, I could see Nassourdine Imavov slightly outputting him, okay? Or matching him, and mixing in the takedowns in the later rounds and winning this. When I think about Adesanya's way to win this fight, I think an early finish where no matter how durable you are, if Adesanya catches you with something really creative or, something that you didn't, maybe he walks you onto his right hand, straight right hand or something, or maybe the closed eyes, swinging hooks, which I don't think is going to happen. Of course, he can put you away, but I don't see there being a finish early on. Maybe it happens. He could walk Nassourdine Imavov onto something early. But I think it's more likely than not, because of Nassourdine Imavov's durability and his ability to mix in the takedowns, and I think he'll shoot a few early on, that it's probably going to go the distance, okay, or get into the later rounds. And I think that Imavov is good enough, even though he's looking sloppy in some of these fights, I think he's good enough to match Adesanya on output, be able to get into the boxing range and do good work because of how good his chin is. And I think he's got some really good snappy short punches on the inside, whereas Adesanya, his boxing on the inside is not that great. Fair enough, he can counter you with something up against the fence. Yeah, that can happen. But Adesanya is really someone that likes to stay at range, pop you with the jab, lead with his kicks. I think Nassourdine Imavov can sort of walk him down a little bit, get into the boxing range. He can take, like a mule kick to the face, it seems. This guy, he can take a punch. And I think he can get into that boxing range and do really good work. I think his kicks are really good as well. This is another thing. You look at people that are on the shorter side that Adesanya has been able to pick apart in the past. They're not really guys that kick a whole lot. Imavov has high output with his kicks. He can go kick for kick with Adesanya a little bit. And the takedowns. This is another thing that's huge in this fight. Even though Nassourdine Imavov is not looked at as a really dangerous grappler, he still has a really solid chance to take Adesanya down in this fight and control him better than a lot of other fighters. I think Imavov has a better control game than Robert Whittaker, right? Because this is the thing. The Brendan Allen fight, his last fight, I think he's getting too much criticism for it because Brendan Allen is someone that, although he's not the best striker, he's very dangerous on the ground. And because he always has the threat of the takedown, he's able to get you into the boxing range and he's able to land big punches. And I think that, him having success against Nassourdine Imavov is in part due to the fact that he took down Imavov in the first round and established the threat of the takedown. But Imavov against Brendan Allen, remember, Brendan Allen's the guy that choked out Muniz. He's the guy that was able to beat the shit out of Paul Craig, a guy that's known for his grappling, keep him on the ground and beat the crap out of him and finish him. Nassourdine Imavov then out-grappled Brendan Allen in the second round. If this guy can out-grapple Brendan Allen, who's got really good jiu-jitsu, whereas Adesanya, good takedown defense, yes. Good jiu-jitsu, great defensive jiu-jitsu, not really. He sometimes gives up his back as well. If Nassourdine Imavov can control Brendan Allen, if Nassourdine Imavov can take down Chris Curtis and take his back, guess what? Brendan Allen fought Chris Curtis. He had a slightly more control time, wasn't really able to take his back, though. Nassourdine Imavov, when he fought Chris Curtis, he lit him up and he took his back with ease. So I think that there's a good chance that Nassourdine Imavov can bank himself a couple rounds with the grappling. I watched the Cannonier fight. He was catching kicks of Cannonier, tripping him over, not choosing to follow him to the ground. I don't think we see that in this fight if he catches a kick. I think if he catches an Adesanya kick and he trips him over, we're not going to see him let Adesanya back up. We're going to see him jump into half guard, jump into side control. That's what we're going to see. And again, he's strong for the weight class. He's very durable. He has high output. The one thing I worry about is his gas tank. Okay? And again, we saw Adesanya show a really good version of himself in the third and fourth round against Dricus du Plessis. So the cruise mode Izzy thing, I don't really know if I can expect that after that. But I also, in the past, have made the mistake of picking a fighter to win based on how good they looked in their last performance and sort of overlooking the stylistic matchup. I think I'm going to lean. I know I've been talking a lot. I haven't given my prediction. I am going to lean Nassourdine Imavov to win this fight by a decision. I think that Adesanya is going to win a first round. I think maybe he's going to win the first round. But I think Nassourdine Imavov is going to have moments where he takes Adesanya down and he controls him. And I think he's going to do well on the feet, or well enough to keep up with Adesanya in the later rounds on the feet, because he will have established the threat of the takedown. And he does have, in my opinion, better inside boxing. Okay, I think stylistically this is a really tricky matchup, because you look at the people that Adesanya beats, Vettori, Vittori's just nowhere near as good as a Nassourdine Imavov. He's well-rounded, but he's a worse striker and he's a worse control grappler, okay? And the durability for Nassourdine is there. And again, the height. Nassourdine Imavov, 6'3", Adesanya 6'4". Like, this is a guy that can match him in, as far as frame goes. Long kicking range as well. Maybe Nassourdine doesn't have the same reach, but has the ability to throw long-rangey kicks. So Adesanya could get it done early. Maybe he could finish Nassourdine. Again, I talked about the durability quite a bit, but we know Adesanya can be dangerous early on. Maybe we see Nassourdine gas out as the rounds go on, because I used to talk about his gas tank being a huge issue. He sort of gassed out against Joaquin Buckley. But to be fair, back then, I didn't really know how crazy Joaquin Buckley's gas tank is. Buckley gets better as fights progress. He gets better as the rounds go on. Against Strickland, though, had a really good fifth round. Against Cannonier was doing really well early, but it seemed like Nassourdine Imavov in that 5-round fight just got better. So I think his gas tank isn't as big of an issue as people make it seem. Fair enough, if you watch the Brendan Allen fight, he looked real sloppy in moments, but that was a grueling matchup. Allen had outgrappled him, and he outgrappled Brendan Allen in the second round, and it was sort of a grueling one on the feet. But you look at the inside boxing exchanges with Allen, Nassourdine not getting rocked at all, landing big shots on Brendan Allen. That's a guy that has a really good grappling game that is also trying to take down other grapplers, because you know how Allen is. He's imposing his will. He doesn't care if you can grapple. He's going to shoot takedowns anyway. Whereas here, Nassourdine's fighting a guy that's only going to strike with him, right? And even against Strickland, Nassourdine, again, was able to do pretty well in that 5th round. I'm going to pick him to win this one. I'm going to pick him to win this one by decision. I'm going to go with a 48-47 for Nassourdine Imavov, close decision, mixing in with the takedowns. The last thing I will say is that if Nassourdine Imavov does not try to take Adesanya down, and I could be wrong about this, you never really know what's going to happen, because maybe he just outstrikes Adesanya, which I doubt. The whole fight, that is, I doubt it. But if he doesn't shoot any takedowns at all, like let's say he catches an Adesanya kick, trips him, tries to take him down from it, and he doesn't jump on it, if he misses out on opportunities like that, or just doesn't really go to the wrestling, I think he's going to lose. Because I do think in a only stand-up battle, Adesanya is going to be a little bit slicker. I think it's very important that he mixes in the takedowns, because that's going to open up opportunities on the feet. That's going to bring Adesanya's hands down a little bit, make him a little bit tired, and give Nassourdine a better chance to get in on the inside in the boxing range. So I think it's very, very important that Nassourdine wrestles. Incredibly important. Otherwise, Adesanya will win. So you never know what's going to happen. Nassourdine could try to go in there and prove a point on the feet, and then he's just going to get outpointed. But yeah, I'm picking Nassourdine 48-47 by decision. I think stylistically this is going to be tricky. Again, Adesanya, when Jan took him down, I know people were going to say Jan was bigger, but Adesanya, when Jan took him down, if you guys don't remember this, there were opportunities for Adesanya to scramble out of that. I forget exactly the technical, thing that was going on there, but Adesanya was kind of just keeping himself there. Not purposefully, of course he wanted to get up, but there were some things he could have done that people with really high level jiu-jitsu, again, you gotta take into account, brother, I'm a wrestler, I'm not the biggest jiu-jitsu guy. But there were some technical things that Adesanya could have done. He has good takedown defense, but Nassourdine Imavov's got good control. So I think we're going to see a 48-47. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Until next time.